All right, everyone. Let's jump into today's podcast. Today's guest is Nancy Marmolejo. And Nancy is an entrepreneur, an educator and teacher, a public speaker, and a coach. So Nancy, thank you for being here.
I'm very happy to be here, Scott. Thank you.
I appreciate it very much. Yeah. So the name of your website is talentandgenius.com. And so that's an interesting name. I'm sure everybody in some way has asked, what am I here for? And so your website name implies that everybody has a unique talent and a genius. So what is that? What is everybody's unique genius? Can you just give us a little introduction so people would understand why you would have a website with that name?
Sure. And in the work that I do, I mean, I'm helping people uncover their unique values so they can apply it to, leadership, to their entrepreneurial efforts. And, we always talk about being distinct and what separates you, what differentiates you. And, as I look at it, we all have these innate strengths, these things that we're just born with. We know them without knowing how we know them. Naturally quizzical or naturally analytical or naturally mechanical or naturally intuitive. I mean, there's just the way we are. And so there's that piece. And then, on top of that, we have things that we've experienced through life that have maybe woken up dormant strengths we didn't know that we had, like a life experience for the, on the highs and the lows. They reveal who we are and what we're all made of. And then that, you have that, it's like little intersecting circles. And then we add on top of that things that we've been trained in and things that we've learned. And if you stand back and look at those from all sides, there's some pretty amazing things that are unique to each of us, especially around how those life experiences play in with our training, who play in with those geniuses. They play off of each other. And so that's what I call your deep genius. And from that point, you have an understanding of not only what am I here for, but why am I the person to talk about it, teach about it, represent it?
Yeah. So that's good, because we'll start off with the general maybe and go to the more specific. And you've started off with the individual experience of talent and genius. And people might not have noticed it, but you just covered three aspects.
I did.
Yeah, yes, you did, Nancy. And I know you do this all the time. You often have three questions that you ask people, I think, but you just covered what's innate, our life experiences, which I don't think are particular accidents, although they may seem like that. Actually, you covered four things. And life-defining moments, you kind of snuck that in there. And the fourth thing you covered is values.
Man, I just interviewed myself, didn't I, Scott? I'm sorry if I took all your questions.
You didn't, because
but they all play on each other. So I can't just say one without including all the others. It's like this mix that the chemistry between those is what
right.
Makes the deep genius.
A lot of times I'll ask people a question and they'll answer it, and in their answer they will have already brought up about three different pathways we could go on. So that's good. That's excellent. Wonderful. So now you've already implied a little bit, because of the way you talked about it, because of your website name, that you are good at helping people understand their own unique gifts. And I think you've said that even that it's easier to see what other people are good at than for them to have that sight themselves. And so perhaps, I think you've even implied that sometimes you need other people to show you what you're really good at. But so let's go into that. How did you get so good at seeing other people's gifts and at encouraging them in their own direction? What's your background?
Right.
and
It's
your
my
life
deep
experience.
genius.
Yeah.
You know, this is I'm exactly where I need to be. And I'm very intuitive. That's something I've actually been told that I'm clairvoyant because I can really get a picture of something as it's developing before it happens, or I'm just highly creative. I mean, it's a combination of everything. You know, I'm creative, intuitive, clairvoyance. I have that sort of mental, psychic energy piece that's cooking things up over here. I can't not make that happen. That's just there at all times. And then, you know, in my life experiences and my trained skills, they kind of go back and forth with each other because I was an educator for many years. I always worked with students who were, you know, falling through the cracks. And what I knew how to do was to see them and say, oh, no, 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 this student is not one that you're going to write off. This person has an amazing gift, and I'm going to help that person see it and help bring them up. And so that experience helped me a lot as an educator. I also grew up in a family business and was working with people at a young age. I was at the cash register, making change old fashioned way, dealing with people and humanity. And so having these people reading skills that were developed at a very, very early age with like the most amazing array of humanity ever. So, you know, we talk about mastery, how you need to have 10,000 hours before you're master at something. I started so young dealing with the public and massive amounts of people. I had my 10,000 hours by the, you know, while I was still a teenager. Yeah. And, you know, in that, putting that into the business I do, you know, take this intuitive piece, take this people reading piece, the experience of understanding how to teach and train, the experience of being in a business as a family venture and understanding the whole, you know, how to run a business and managing and marketing, you know, all of those things like came together saying, okay, I could do this as a business, which is awesome because everybody wants to do what they love as a business and get paid for it. And I found the way to do that. So I feel very blessed to have that. And I know that how I see people, how I reflect people's gifts back to them is a real, that's my genius. You know, I could see you and see reflect you back to you. And people will look over their shoulder and say, wait, who are you talking about? That's me. And then suddenly they start to see themselves. That breaks people open in a good way.
Yeah, in a very good way. So I wanted to ask you, well, first of all, I want to say, if anybody's listening to this conversation up to this point, get in touch with Nancy because she's really going to clarify what you're here for. And we need that to move ahead. So let me throw you a little curve here, and then we'll go on into some of these things that you've already talked about. As an individual, because you're so used to talking, you know, coaching people who are entrepreneurs, which is very important. We'll delve into that in a minute. But what can you say to active people, to people who may or may not consider themselves athletes? How can finding clarity on your own individual gifts help you as an active person, as an athlete?
Well, that's a good question. That is, and I've never really put it into that context, but I'll put it, what the first thing that comes to mind has to do with life experiences. Mm-hmm. So I have actually coached some professional athletes, and I'm not positioning them around the fact that they have they hold a record in this sport or that sport, or they got this big, title or whatever it is. Because I do have past clients who have some pretty incredible accomplishments, but it's always their story that I'm most fascinated with. how the level of self-discipline. I say, how did you get to be so self-disciplined? And this person's telling me, when I was 5 years old, I was growing up in the projects. I had to get up and help my brother with the paper route. And I sold magazines after school, and I mowed people's lawns. And there was this like work ethic that started. And it was this drive to complete and succeed and achieve. And they applied that to their athleticism. So there's like having that understanding, somebody who has a natural drive, somebody who has a life experience, which really made them have to develop that. That's one way of looking at it. Also, what is a person's drive that gets them to do the type of activity that they do? What's the story behind it? How did that basketball player get into basketball? Who invited them? What was the story? What was something somebody told them about themselves that they either knew was not true or knew was true? I mean, all of those things. And so we really think about the life experience piece of it. You know, so I think that everybody's story is very, very unique. And that as we're looking at our innate strengths, the things that we've learned and been formally taught along the way, the life experiences that have shaped us, we start to understand that we have a story, a good story, you know, an origin story, a founder's story, you know, a positioning story. And I love reading biographies, especially about athletes, because the amount of discipline that's needed. And people who might have been, you know, retired, and everybody says, oh, you're washed out, and then they make a comeback. I mean, you know, George Foreman has a great biography.
Yeah, he does. He does.
You know, I mean, I'm looking at it going, oh, he goes out for an easy run and he goes 17 miles. Okay, all right, people, come on. You know, and that was him kind of deciding, I want to get back into the game. So, you know, we don't have to be at the professional level or at this elite level to have that success, but what motivates you to be active? What is what's your origin story of the activities that you choose? How did you get interested in it? Who was it? I mean, these are the types of things that are really inspiring to others.
They are. And, you know, people that choose to live intentionally, I think are really inspiring. So you mentioned earlier, you said you'll look at somebody and you'll say, oh no, as an educator, even you'll look at somebody and say, oh no, this person has potential. And yet I certainly, this is applied to me. And I think a lot of people, they have a veil over their eyes as to what their gifts are. And I do see with some of the really high level athletes that I've talked to, I don't like to use the word athlete in such a narrow context sometimes, but with the high level athletes that I've talked to and related to a little bit on the podcast, there's a high level of focus. And so focus is a little bit different than being constantly distracted. I think we can all be distracted. There's too many distractions in the world not to sometimes be distracted.
Mm-hmm.
But focus is a little different concept than being constantly distracted. So when you look at somebody, and a lot of times, would you say that when you talk to people, you're going to see that there's a veil over their own eyes as far as their own understanding of what their value and story is?
It's hard to see it in yourself. And you know, we look from the inside out. I could look at another person and tell them everything they want to know about themselves that they might not see, and I might be missing half of the things about myself. Somebody will reflect back to me. I can't. You know, I think it can be challenging if there's somebody that you have a trust with who knows you well. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you just ask a person saying, what is a strength I have that you see that I'm totally overlooking? You know, just asking in that way is an easy way. And then the other thing is to start being observant of other people's talents and genius.
Yeah.
look and be observant of others. If somebody just seems to have this natural ability to throw chaos into order, reflect that back to them. And they might think, well, of course, can't everybody do this? It's like, no.
Yeah.
I just want to commend you. So compliment people, acknowledge people, honor people for what they're doing. Or if somebody is sharing their life story and there's struggle involved, acknowledge, say, wow, I hear that. And I want to just, acknowledge you for where you are today, what you have gone through. And I'm proud of you. And I'm honored to be your friend. And as some people will be like, oh my God, why do you have to get so squishy and emotional? You do it in the way that you do it. Say, if it's very whatever you want to say, however you want to do it. But there's something, what I notice is the more we start to spot it in others, the easier it is for us to feel it in ourselves.
Yeah.
Because they might reciprocate.
And
you're
And so that brings us to relationship, which we might come back to even again later, but you really can't live your life fully, or you can't achieve what you want by yourself. You really need other people. And by that, I mean, you need their input, you need their gifts, you need to help them. You need to be this, by need, I mean, not that you're needy, but you need to be in relationship with other people.
Yeah, I have an example of that. So not everybody is a people reader. I'm a people reader. I'm a student of human nature. I think you are too.
Yeah.
But not everybody is. However, I've been in situations where somebody might be really, really great at knowing how to create a calm, peaceful space, how to rearrange a room so you walk in and just like, oh my gosh, this feels zen-like. And I can sit in that room and I can now tap into my greatest gifts because it has calmed me down. That person may not have the same gift as I do. But they created an atmosphere for me to be at my best. And then I'm at my best and I can reflect back to them.
Yeah.
And then we're all at our best. So we can create environments that support each other's genius. We don't all have to be the same. And some people will think, oh, well, that person knows how to be naturally a great public speaker. They're better than me. Are you kidding? The person who builds the stage and the podium and makes it beautiful is just as important and just as much a genius as the person standing up there delivering the talk. And we have to have an understanding and see that. I'm very, I want to see this from a very democratic place, a place of equality as well. Not everybody has the high level of education, or not everybody has all of the official credentials, but what they bring naturally is a form of genius that must be acknowledged. And that is, I think, something very, very important.
Yeah. That's a foundational concept, because some of the people who might listen to this podcast may be Feldenkrais practitioners. And a very foundational thing in that method is that you meet people where they're at. And Moshe Feldenkrais actually started off very early tutoring people. And there was a story told where the parents of this kid who was not interested in school, and he couldn't learn, I think it was math or whatever it was, Moshe met him on the soccer field and began to tutor him there. That's where this kid was.
Yeah. I get it. We do definitely have to meet people where they are. Yeah. And have that understanding. It's empathy on so many levels.
Yeah. And in the sport of ultra running, you would think that would be a very, very individual sport, and it is sometimes. Because if the race is long enough, you could be out there all day. You could be out there at night running by yourself. But you can't do that. I was just reading a book about the Badwater race from the lowest point in the United States to Whitney Portal. And you can't do that without a massive crew. No, massive, I don't mean number of people. I mean the massive number of hours they put into helping you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
That's a whole other topic, like ultrathoners. I mean, I'm fascinated with the mindset of,
so,
kind of the extreme sports.
yeah. Well, and unless you're winning them, people would tell you that they're a little bit more average than they look like when, if somebody finishes a 100-mile race, and more people can do that than you think. If that, you don't have to be the most fit person in the entire world to do that. Of course, you have to train for it, but the dedication has to be there.
Mm-hmm.
But so we've talked a little bit about the individual there, that everybody has a unique gift. And you talked about life-defining moments and values. So can you list a few different kinds of life-defining moments? In other words, there could be a life-defining moment where you cross some kind of a metaphorical finish line and you're ecstatic, but that certainly doesn't describe all the life-defining moments. Can you?
Well, the life-defining moment taught you that, yes, I can do it. How many people, I know that when I got my master's degree, I was holding on to the empty case they give you that doesn't actually have a degree in it, but I just burst into tears because I was working full time and putting myself through school, and I felt like I had just crossed a finish line, and I broke down into tears. How many people do that? Like, oh my God, I did it. That shows something about yourself. It's a life-defining moment. I doubted myself. I kept going. I was able to do it. A life-defining moment can be something very joyful. Having a child and holding this beautiful creature and saying, I never knew my heart could love as much as it loves right now. We here in California have experienced our fair share of wildfires. I mean, all through the West. Natural disasters have been hitting at unprecedented rates. And how many of us have seen people come and be of service in these moments of great need, and they might not have ever thought in their life to be of service, and they discover there's something in them that goes beyond themselves as an individual, from the I to the we. That's a huge life-defining experience because it affects you for the rest of your life. How many nonprofits, how many movements have started as a result of something happening in somebody's life? They were not expecting it, but it happened, and it just opened something up. They created a response. Those are incredible. And one of the things I always think about, I'm in the Bay Area, and I have redwood trees and trails with redwood trees not too far from where I live. And I love going and hiking in the redwoods because it calms me instantly. But on when you go through a redwood forest, you look on the trees and there's always these burn spots on the trunk where they may be hit by lightning, or they could have just been in a forest fire. And the thing about redwood trees is that their bark is fire resistant.
Yeah.
So they don't actually burn down, but they get these scars on them. And they're still there.
Metaphor,
Oh yeah. And the other thing, this is the other part that just blew my mind, is that their seed pods, their cones are very tight. And the only way that they can open up and release the seeds is through intense heat.
Yeah.
So those fires are unavoidable for their own survival. Mm-hmm. And when I hike and I see this tree with burn marks down it, I just bow to that tree and I say, I've got my fair share of scars too, and I'm still standing. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah.
I cry. I go hiking. I'm a mess. I'm halfway through a hike and I'm like, oh, these trees. It's so it's just like okay, I'm still standing. What am I still standing here for? What is mine to do? How am I to show up? And these are life-defining moments.
Yeah. So the redwood tree doesn't want the fire to engulf its bark, but it happens. And yeah, so what's the beauty when we see an oil painting of this twisted, gnarled, partly burned, maybe still a little bit alive tree against the stark sky in the desert? I mean, it's beautiful because of all it's been through.
And that is, in how many of us are still standing? These are life stories, and that's a form, we're resilient.
Yeah.
We survive. We had our down times and we got back up again. It's terrible when you're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I ask people, tell me everybody wants to go to the harder moments in life and say how they learned a lot from that. But then other people, they got married and they never thought they would, or they never thought they could find their partner and the joy that they have in their relationship, or a dream trip of traveling or climbing to the top of the pyramids in Mexico. I mean, there are so many
ways.
Yeah, just open your eyes. They open your eyes.
So here's another way that there could be a life-defining moment. And that is, you've talked about I hate this, so I do this. What is that? I can't put it in your words, but you know what I'm talking about.
The love, hate, create?
Love, hate, create, yeah. And so another life-defining moment would be something that's irritated you for years, and you finally understand the value in that. Yeah. And it just, now I know how to use that. Mm-hmm. And it goes, I think it goes along with values. So you actually open it up to something else here. So rather than just being an individual who's concerned with what their gifts are, which doesn't go as far as it could, because what are your gifts for?
Yeah.
But the next step, I used to read books and I wanted to see what I could get out of them. But then you can come back and read that same book and say, well, how could I teach this? Or how beautiful was it that this person taught this thing that I already know, but look how they did it. So it's a different vantage point, a different thing. And so you can say, boy, what are my gifts? And you could get stuck there for a long time. Or then you could say, how can I use my gifts? And that's when we get a little bit into the entrepreneur part of it, because so here's the thing. If you really want to get your gifts out, sometimes, not always, but sometimes you're going to find yourself in the place of charging for what you do. And the reason you do that is because if you don't charge people what it's worth, then you won't be able to do it for them. And then that won't be out in the world.
Right.
So that becomes kind of a next step. It might, service is the next step. It might not be an entrepreneurship, but in our case, maybe we'll talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So talk about how being an entrepreneur is really an extension of service and using your gifts.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'll say, first of all, being a leader. And leadership can happen by, I'm going to lead the way and start my business, or leadership can happen in a career space. And I'm, going to make a space for myself in this career that I have. Asking yourself the question, because this was some great feedback I got from a client of mine maybe 5-6 years ago. And she says, you know what, Nancy, your job is not to help people find their genius. That's the easy part. You have to get people to the point that says, now that I know this about myself, what am I here to create? Because that's really, I give away a lot of free content, and people are like, what's my genius, Nancy? I'm holding some secret code. You're going to swipe your credit card, push a button, and I'm going to spit out, this is your genius. It's no, it's just understanding you and these aspects of you. I'll tell you that for free. You don't have to, I'll show you how to do it. But what I really am charged up about is a person standing there saying, okay, now that I know this about myself, what am I here to create? What is the business I'm here to create? What is the message I'm here to give to the world? Who is it that I'm really speaking to? what do I need to communicate? How do I need to communicate it? So it really becomes the starting point for something much, much bigger that generally is around, some form of communication, some form of creation, some form of leadership, whether as an entrepreneur or, in a career space or in an organization, volunteer work, philanthropy. I mean, there are lots of different places where it can be applied. From an entrepreneur's point of view, I will, work with people around how they position themselves, how they create a message about themselves and the work that they do. What's the story? What are the stories that you tell? What are the talking points? And how can those always reflect this unique perspective that you have?
Right. So developing your business then is about developing yourself.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Well, go ahead.
That's the big benefit of starting a business. People start a business and then it's like, oh, you didn't know all your stuff's going to come up in your face. Oh, okay. Well, we left that part out, but it's happening. That's it.
Yeah. So some people start a business to make money. Well, that's probably a pretty good idea if you're in business, but it can be, I think, the worst form of motivation. In other words, we talked about life-defining moments. To understand your life-defining moments, you go into your values. And in fact, if you don't have a certain value at a certain time, but you develop that later, I think you understand your life-defining moments better. Go ahead. Can you comment on that?
Are you talking about, no, so you're talking about how the core values play into the life-defining moments?
Mm-hmm.
Well, our core values are the things that are important to us. Mm-hmm. And so if achievement is important to you and you have a life-defining moment where you achieve something, obviously that's a great example. That's why it's important to you. But sometimes what happens is these life-defining moments make us realize something's important to us that we didn't quite have on our radar until then. And those are what I call like the dormant strengths or the dormant values. They've been hiding under the surface. They just needed to get a little watering and a little sunshine, and boom, they start to bloom. You're looking at them going, where'd that come from? And then you realize, oh my goodness, I've been carrying that around with me for how long? And how long have I not acknowledged it? So you've got these beautiful, just there's surprises. That's one of the things I love about this whole concept is that as long as we're evolving and growing, learning, staying curious, keeping our minds sharp, being creative, asking questions, exploring all the nooks and crannies, we're going to find new things out about ourselves. So what you say about, this is who I am and this is what I'm all about, in 2021, well, maybe in 2025, there'll be some more things that you've experienced that round you out even more. Maybe there are some things that happened 10 years ago that you never really gave credit to, but now you start to realize how pivotal they were.
Yeah. Yeah, you can actually okay, so do you believe in circles or maybe a spiral of life?
Oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah. Can you comment on that? In other words, go ahead. Maybe you're the same as you were 12 years ago because your basic core values haven't gone away. And you would still agree with some of the things you said 12 years ago, but now you might say them differently, or you might add a lot more to them. Or so is there a cycle? Is there a spiral to life? What do you think?
I like the concept of a spiral because it's, ascending, and it's like it's going about what we have and building on it. So whatever visual, whatever metaphor helps you anchor onto the fact that we're always learning and growing.
Yeah.
And that growth mindset is so important. Now there are people in this world that are not, they don't have a growth mindset. That's not important to them. And I don't think they would listen to a podcast called The Aware Athlete. So we don't have to worry about them right now. I think we've got our people in this room.
Yeah. So, so how do we let's ask another question. What is the value of being bold in life and in business? That's a really good question, I think.
I love that. So bold means different things for different people. Now, if we think about it, when somebody says, you got to be bold, then we associate it immediately with, maybe there's a pushy quality, there's a forcefulness to it. But really bold for me is just being unapologetically you. There's something bold about that because most of us want to hide a lot of parts of ourselves. And so the boldness is, I'm not going to be afraid of myself anymore. I'm not going to be afraid of my power. I'm not going to be worried about what other people think. And that's not an invitation for people to be unfiltered in a bad way, in a negative way, with being toxic, racist, bigoted. I mean, it's not that kind of unfiltered. I'm talking about really understanding, your greatest good and your greatest self-expression and how creative and how amazing and wonderful you are. And how sometimes we find out maybe there's a celebrity who always plays the bad guy. And then you find out this person was in musical theater and was all like, singing, dancing. And you think to yourself, I never would have put that together, but now it makes that person a little bit more interesting. And then they finally come out and, a little bit more bold about it. I mean, that's one example. So I think there's just something about being comfortable in your own skin and being okay with that and expressing it is an act of boldness.
So I think that's the boldest thing you can do. And to me, that's the life process. I mean, that's the spiral, more and more of that. Because really, if you let's just use the example of a great athlete, what they're trying to do is put something together so that it all comes out as them. In other words, so that their body is doing what their body can do without interference from the cultural norm, from fear of what people will think, from these things that we hold in ourselves, we may not even really think about them. But they're trying to put something together in a way that their body, their unique person was exactly meant to do it. And it's never perfect.
Yes.
And, but if you get successful at that, you're an innovator and you can't, that is expressing your gifts. That is the most courageous thing I think you can do.
Yeah.
And that is the thing that you're doing with the most understanding. I tend to be, I think, really tolerant in a lot of ways. So if you get really, really, really tolerant without too much awareness, you can actually end up not doing anything. If that makes sense.
Or letting some pretty unacceptable things pass by without calling it out.
Without calling it out.
Yeah. So these are great observations. And this is just the ever ongoing aspect of self-observation, self-awareness.
Exactly. Yeah.
Self-reflection. It's interesting because when we put it all together, whenever when I'm working with my clients, I always ask them, do you have any kind of a practice that helps you stay grounded, with meditation, mindfulness, what all the different ways that people want to name it, because I know that that's a big part of the growth piece, is to have some sort of a reflective time in your day, to have some kind of a practice that calms you down, takes all those, all that brain energy and simmers it down for a second here, calms down all the parts of the brain that are freaking out, and just like, okay, everybody, we're not being attacked. It's all good. Just calm down. So the more we can do that, the more we can access our genius, because we can look at ourselves more objectively. We can see other people more objectively. We can see the gifts in it. We can reflect it back to others. We can create this holistic picture of it.
Right. So you talked about discipline before, and that discipline of having a practice, that's very important. And I think for me, I tend to be really analytical. So slowing that down a little bit, I think the quieter we can get, the less confusion we'll have about what our own gifts are. Can you take and comment on that a little bit?
I think that's a really good, observation. Getting quiet, getting in tune, we start to become more connected to our higher self. We get those downloads in those moments of contemplation and reflection. And it's not, a lot of people just run through life on defense all the time. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know I should be doing this. I know I should be doing that. Okay, whatever. Yeah, but, and they go. And that's a form of defensiveness. And defensiveness, you're never going to let any new information or growth access you, because you're so afraid of whatever it is that you're afraid of, whether I don't have the time to deal with it, or it's going to make me have to change. I don't have room in my life for disruption. I mean, there's all sorts of stories that get created. And so, yeah, I'm a big fan of calm it down, help yourself feel, in touch with who you are, connect with other people, reflect back to them what they see in themselves. We're on this growth journey.
Yeah. So I love that, Nancy. Thank you. So talk to people now that they've gotten to know you a little bit, and it's been wonderful what you've had to say here, and how this applies to everybody. And so talk a little bit about the work that you actually do. I mean, I know that you do a lot of public speaking, and you work with corporate clients, but you actually work with individuals, helping them really clarify what their strengths are in their business. So just give us a little picture of what you actually do.
So I do a lot of speaking. I speak to corporate audiences. I speak to entrepreneurs. I kind of hop between the two. And because this is something that it fuels us as leaders, it fuels us as innovators and creators. So with a business client, somebody might come along and say, I know 1,000 things, and I've got this business. I've grown so much. I don't know how to get back to clarity on communicating, the most important thing I need people to know about my business. And so I work with people on their branding, their messaging, their positioning. So that's one piece of it. What are the talking points about you? What is the story that you want people to know about you? And one of the things I always say is you have to control your own narrative, because otherwise somebody else is going to control it for you, and they might not get it right. So if you have your talking points about you, and I know so many people who've been misrepresented, because somebody starts describing them, and then all of a sudden the whole world believes that that's what that person's capable of, and they're sitting there going, that's not really me. Yeah. I was like, okay, well, let's reel it back in. Let's do that. So that's in creating, whether it's the brand presence or the language on your website or the talking points, your content, how you want to show up. That is a big part of the work that I do with entrepreneurs. And in the leadership space, I'll be working with somebody who, we have an understanding of that person's deep genius. How does that define you as a leader? How can you use that to move things forward for yourself as a leader, to enroll people into your vision, to communicate more effectively, to collaborate more powerfully? Maybe there's some blind spots you have. How can we tap into your strengths and tap into all that you bring to the table to work through that? So there's, and then also when I do talks, everybody in the room leaves feeling more capable, more confident, feeling that there's more to them than people understand, and now they're ready to do something about it. And as a result of that, there's a person might be wanting to have had a promotion for a long time, but nothing happened. They learn how to embrace those unique aspects of themselves, communicate that more powerfully so they're heard and they're seen. And that's in business and in the career space. Being heard, being seen, being known for what it is that you are great at. And it's not done in an obnoxious or bragging way. It's just a very natural way. So you don't have to push and claw so much for people to value you. You lay it out. And
yeah. So I like the idea of integration because this ties right back into what you were saying before. Because if you are very clear about what you're doing in your business, that removes a lot of distraction from your life, and it helps you integrate your personal practice. And I think in that sense, maybe if you'll know you're running your business well, if it's helping you lead a more powerful life also.
yes.
So it's all integrated. It's exciting that way. So it's not your business over here and your life over here, but they feed off of each other. And then you mentioned the leadership space, and it's so easy to think, oh, I'm not a leader. But the purpose of society is to get us enough conformity that we can have something that we call a society, and we can work together a little bit. But society does not care about you. The basic concept of society does not care about you developing your individuality. And therefore, it does not care so much about advancing itself as maintaining itself. So if we're going to advance as a society, we need some people who are going to step outside and be leaders. And that's really everybody. So being contrary for the sake of being contrary is not worth much. But being contrary for the sake of your values and advancing society. One person, very famous, said, awareness is leading your life as if it mattered. And so maybe could you have one final word on how important leadership is in this world?
Leadership is very important, and leadership, it doesn't always have to be something that's looked at as individualistic. Leadership is, I'm very collaborative, very community focused. And so what is something we can do together? How can we create a solution? And so that I feel is very, very important right now. And building bridges and becoming more, collective and collaborative in some of the things that we do, whether it's in our communities or in our businesses or in the jobs that we do. And, yes, there's this thing about, I have these individual strengths and I have this individual unique deep genius, but I see it in you too. So it becomes this we have this ecosystem where we see how important each person is. So this is some of the work that I do, bringing deep genius in to address bias, to use it as part of anti-racism work. Everybody has value that is brought to the table, and recognizing that and honoring that, eliminates a lot of the barriers and the obstacles, because what we want to do is we want to be able to see the gem that each person is. And so I look at this work as really revealing the value of an individual, and also the way we can all come together and put this collective genius. We have a lot of problems to solve in this world, on a societal basis, on a global environmental basis. I mean, you pick a category. We can all huddle up and get in there, and we need to create solutions right now. So the more that we are looking at everybody's unique contribution and value, I think that's going to help us advance.
Yeah. So you open up a whole topic there of bias, because the problems that we face, people will say, well, we have a problem with the environment. That's true. So what are we going to do about it? Well, it doesn't matter. What really matters is whether we can be unbiased and cooperate, because then we'll find a solution.
Yeah. That's a whole other interview because we'll end up going for another hour, and I don't know if we're going to be able to sustain that.
Yeah, I think we really could. Nancy, it's been beautiful. Thank you so much. I
Scott, I'm so appreciative of the invitation to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I just love this time.